It's time for the Rose Chat Podcast, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the world's most beloved flower, the rose. Join award-winning gardeners Chris VanCleave and Teresa Byington as they chat with rose lovers and experts from around the globe. With each episode, you'll gain valuable knowledge and insights to achieve the rose garden you've always dreamed of. Listen now as we explore the world of roses.
Our great friend Rebecca Koraytem of David Austin Roses is with me today to share some of the top home and garden trends and how roses blend beautifully with these trends. Doesn't that sound like fun? Hey, Rebecca, welcome back to Rose Chat.
Well, hello, Teresa, and what a joy to be with you yet again here in this lovely spring day.
Oh my. Now we're recording just a little bit early before it's going to be released. It's mid-April and I'm still cutting back roses. We've just had, even yesterday, a few snow flurries. And I'm in the Midwest, but I'm wondering how are things out where you are?
Yeah, so I am in the Pacific Northwest, and literally minutes before I ran in to do this with you, I'm putting out bags upon bags of mulch. I feel like my spirit is there and my will is there, but my body won't let me do it all in one day. And so, I actually cut back, fertilized everything. I like to put down my fertilizer before I put down the mulch, just because it's closer to the source, and we've had a few really good rains here. And so I thought now's a great time to mulch. And at least I got round one of mulch down before our afternoon showers come in.
Oh, perfect. I do the same thing. Usually mulching happens here around Mother's Day. More than one year, I've gotten a big pile of mulch on the driveway for Mother's Day, and it's just perfect. Perfect. So we'll get to enjoy your roses long before we have them, but I'm pretty excited as I'm waiting. The lilacs are getting ready to bloom.
Love lilacs. Love them so much. That fragrance brings back such great memories.
Oh, everyone says that. I mean, everyone has a lilac memory. It's kind of like roses. You can hardly talk to anyone that doesn't have a rose or a lilac memory. So that's special. One of those grandma things, I think. They introduced us to all those wonderful things.
Yes.
Well, Rebecca, in your opinion, what makes a garden special?
Oh, well, we just hit on it. Fragrance is one of the things that I think captures all of our hearts and souls. A dear friend of mine, when my daughter was born 25 years ago, a month after her birth, one of my very close friends that I worked with at Southern Living Magazine sent me a bouquet of lilacs. And I always associate that. I remember roses in my grandmother's garden, in my mother's garden. I remember the fragrance of tea olive flowering on my piano teacher's near her front steps. And even though I loved that fragrance, it gave me anxiety because I knew I had not practiced my piano scales enough. But so roses tie in great with that. But I think a lot of us tie what makes something special, especially a garden, back to our relatives or where something significant happened for us. And both my grandmothers were big gardeners. One had a huge collection of camellias. She lived in South Carolina. And my other grandmother lived in Georgia, and she just had a green thumb beyond belief. So I have it in my genes. And, I think for all of our listeners here today, you're here because you adore roses. And I can't imagine a garden without roses. So that's what makes a garden special to me.
That's so true. That's fragrance is such a big tie for all of us, and and we're here because we love roses. And I'm thinking about Mr. Austin. When I was first planting my garden 30 years ago, I was totally infatuated with Mr. Austin, or at least the picture of him in his tweed jacket. I bet you know the one I'm talking about.
Oh, yes.
And his amazing roses, because it was something new. I liked old garden roses and I knew about hybrid teas, but he had something different. So I'm wondering, what do you think made a rose special to Mr. Austin?
Well, he was infatuated with the old species roses. He thought they were so charming, but he also realized that not everyone was going to have that passion that he had for them because they only flowered once. The color range was basically whites, blushes, pale pinks, and some crimson tones. But he also knew that he could improve upon this. And that's when he crossed the old species love roses that he was so infatuated with the modern roses, aka the hybrid teas, to create what is now known as the English rose. And what we're going to be talking about today, what made those special was they repeat bloom. Those species roses did not. They had fragrance. This really improved upon the species roses. It gave a wider color range. So now the yellows and the apricots that were not available with the species roses were now into this genetics. They were very, very resilient. They were charming. You had climbers and shrubs in the collection, and it brought a lot of disease resistance into that collection as well.
Oh, it did. When you say the color, I think now, like Bathsheba. I mean, there's just so many. One of my early ones was Mary Rose Pink, lots and lots of
Yes.
pink that I had. But then we have Bathsheba, and all the yellows, and oh my goodness, such a large range. So well done, Mr. Austin.
Yes, well done. And we all salute you.
Yes.
He passed away December 2018. And we are so serious about continuing that work that he set forth. When he passed away, he knew really about 10 years down the line what was going to be coming forth. And he was very pleased with it. One of the biggest things he was pleased with was the increased disease resistance and the remonancy and the bud set that he was going to be getting on these newer varieties.
Oh, and it's so true. I mean, they're just getting, as with so many roses and other plants, our hybridizers are just getting better and better. It's just so exciting. It's such an exciting time to be collecting roses, I think.
Yes. And, here's the thing. We always said our roses play well with others, along with perennials, other rose collections. Mr. Austin really wanted them to be an integral part of the landscape. And I agree with you 100%. What the breeders, not just us, everyone, what they're bringing forth is amazing. And it's no better time to be in love with roses than right now.
And I'm hearing, we're going to talk about trends here in a minute, but one of the trends that I'm hearing a lot about is that people are very interested in roses again. I mean, people are selling out of roses. I mean, people are very interested in roses again. And, a lot of the grandma flowers are back, and you just can't, have a grandma garden without having roses. It's just impossible to do.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right on that. It's interesting that you're saying grandma. And that roses are becoming so much more popular. Back when I was a garden editor at Southern Living, and I did a landscape design service for them and this was back in, let me get the date right, like 93, 94, back in that era. I would get on the questionnaire, I want evergreen, low maintenance. I don't want any of those grandmama flowers that are
Times have
difficult.
changed.
And people were afraid of roses back then. I really attribute Knockout to bringing forward friendly roses and making people not afraid to garden. I think a lot of people found with David Austin roses, they were very forgiving and very adaptive, and they made it easier to garden, and you didn't need an arsenal of chemicals to do so.
Absolutely. I as a master gardener, it's just one of those things that, master gardeners back in the day just were not growing roses. I think they'd grown the hybrid teas back in the 70s and 60s and 70s, and they were just not interested in it. They were more sensitive on the chemical issue and that sort of thing too. So I did a program for master gardeners. I did to a few master gardener groups, and I called it Just Like Hairstyles, Roses Have Changed Since the 80s. So we had fun with that, and I would ask the board members to send me pictures of their hair in the 80s, because they were of a certain age that their hair was going to look very different
I
from the
love it.
80s. And so that was so fun. And it was just a good way for me to tell them, give roses another chance, because
Yes.
things have improved. So, and they have.
That is wonderful. Well, all of this talk about roses and filling our gardens up with these beautiful blooms kind of brings us to our first trend that
Let's
we're
go.
seeing. So, minimalism is now giving away to maximalism. So, if you remember, kind of back 5 years ago, gray was the color to paint everything. We wanted to
Mhm.
pare it down. We wanted open floor plans. We wanted it clean and kind of that farmhouse, white and black, slick. Everything was very, very curated. But guess what? That trend is shifting and we are into bolder colors. I am getting a lot of customers going, I want your dark pinks. I want your golds. I want your bright colors.
Mhm.
People used to be really kind of shy about mixing, say, a bold Princess Alexandra of Kent next to a golden celebration or a Molyneux, something that was very vivid. Now people are like, bring it on. I am in love with this.
I'm hearing the same thing. People are in love with color right now. It is
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
A friend of mine, I have a house in South Carolina, and when my mother passed away and we were consolidating everything, I inherited a lot of her furniture. And um, my friend came over to visit, and she said, "Oh, your style is grand millennial. It combines inherited or pass along treasures to fluff your nest." And I said, that is so true, because a lot of us are inheriting properties or garden
Mhm.
ornamentation from parents and grandparents.
Mhm.
And that is part of this kind of maximalism trend. We may be digging up those roses that were in grandma's garden and bringing them to ours,
Mhm.
or we may be inheriting that beautiful Italian terracotta pottery and finding it a home for it in, every little
Mhm.
nook and corner. Gardens aren't huge anymore unless you are on a a larger piece of property. If you're in a new home, it's small, and so
Mhm.
here is your green light to maximize every corner and space.
Mhm. Absolutely. Through the years, that's been one of the most the special things that I've gotten asked, and that is, I need to take this plant, a rose from my
Hmm.
grandmother or my mother's garden, and I want to bring it to mine. She's
Right.
passed, or I mean, I've got to help several people do that, and it's just very special just to be a part of that. But I can honestly say, because of pass along plants and that sort of thing, when I walk in my garden, the stories come to life, and I'm never happier than if a guest comes and they want to take a slow walk in the garden, and I'll just tell them as many stories as they want to hear. That just makes it very personal to me.
It does. And it is a way to have kind of a botanical history of
Mhm.
family and friends and even where you've been. And kind of what happened in your life. And I look in my own garden right now here in Everett, Washington, and I see trends that I've gone through, even though I've been here only 8 years. This garden has morphed so many times. It was my husband's place, and he was a bachelor with a lot of ivy and grass. and he loves what's going on now. But it really is a botanical history of kind of who you are.
Mhm. Oh, it is. It is for sure. Yeah. And a very special a part of your history.
Yeah. So now that's going to bring us to trend number 2 that we're seeing. And this, garden trends often follow both fashion and home trends. And it is to opt for that lived in look. We are now giving you permission to loosen up. Um,
Yes.
you know, there was a trend, and I think really back in the 80s, particularly. And then I even saw it in the 2000s where everything had to be groomed to the nth degree.
Mhm.
Everything, I have a rule. If you cannot tell what a shrub is from the curb because it's been so over pruned,
Oh,
you're doing it too much.
yeah.
And a lot of times people will bring in an amazing assortment of plants, roses included, and then overshape them, over prune them, over clean up. There is a very big trend right now, and it's kind of controversial. Should you remove leaves out of your garden? And there's a time and a place for all of that. I think, here in Everett, I have a lot of evergreens, so I don't have like maples and things like that where I
Mhm.
can compost the leaves. So I have to buy that mulch and to improve my soil. But there are a lot of benefits to kind of raking those leaves aside and letting them fall in place and enrich the soil, because you create these amazing little biomes in the gardens where earthworms and birds and all kinds of things that are out there scratching around. You're making a happy place for it. So ease up. Don't feel like you've got to
Mhm.
haul every leaf off. When those beautiful rose petals fall, just even if you're going to clean them up, just take some time to take a cup of tea out there or cocktail and enjoy that beauty and that charm and that romance that's created.
It's rose confetti.
It is rose confetti. Hey,
So
brides
pretty.
pay big money for this.
Yes, it's so pretty when they first fall. It can get messy, and we can clean up at that point. But we don't want to miss those little special things that they give us.
That you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So, I was talking about over pruning and over shaping. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. We still want you to deadhead judiciously, but what we don't want you to do is come out with a pair of shears, electric shears, and just, ah, turn it into a meatball. Now, I am going to tell you something. If you have a late summer event or early fall event, let's say early fall event, David Austins are famous for their repeat bloom. And I think this would actually work with other roses too. We have a trial at Overdivest Nursery in New Jersey. And we had Jersey Days tour come through on October 3rd. Well, Tim Burge, who is out of our UK office in England, comes over and checks on these trials for us. And he decided he was going to trial something in the trial. And he did two different cutbacks. One was the last week of July, and then the next one was like the following week and the first week of August. And he aggressively cut these mature 5-year-old plants back by half. I am
Mm.
here to tell you the fall flush for October 3rd. So it's roughly 50 days, okay, roughly, because it is weather dependent too,
Mhm.
was phenomenal. What you get is this clean flush of foliage, amazing bud set, because roses kind of get tired if you've had a really hot, dry summer.
Mhm.
They do kind of struggle, and you do need to grant them grace. Even if you're the best rose gardener, you do have to grant them grace through the heat of summer. But it was so eye-opening to both of us. We're like, you know what? This is worth it. If someone wants to return to the garden when things start cooling off, or they've got a
Yes.
wedding or a party, about 50-ish days prior to that event, and as long as you're not up in a freeze zone, um, you want to do it before then. Um, Prune for that late flush, and it was amazing. It was so pretty.
What a great tip. That is outstanding. So glad to know.
Yeah, yeah. So that is one time I'm going to say, yeah, get out there, but not with the shears. Not with the shears.
Electric ones.
Yeah. Oh my heavens. So the next trend that we are seeing, where you are in the house and this open floor plan is kind of going bye bye. People, I think, when they were trapped in their house during COVID, they're like, I want some privacy. I don't want to see my entire family all the time. Dividing and conquering with walls, both in the house and now out in the garden, is a big trend.
Okay.
So often I would get called out to a landscape job, and people would be, new to a golf course community or a lake community, or they would be here in the Pacific Northwest and, they had a mountain view, and they would be like, I want it all cleared. I want to see every inch of golf course or every inch of lake, or I want to see Mount Baker in the background. Now, the trend is to judiciously frame those views, put some walls back in, use them for screening, use them to create intimate spaces within the garden. And what better way to do that than with roses? People don't think about that. They think, I'm going to have to do the emerald green arborvitae. But, it's got to be a solid evergreen wall, but you can actually create a lot of charm with roses. And anything, if you go to our website and you're going, well, what makes a good hedge? You can actually put that in, and we'll bring up, all the roses that could be planted in a hedge. But normally anything that is a little more upright, some good options would be like Olivia, Roald Dahl, Litchfield Angel. Queen of Sweden is very upright and narrow if you have a small space. One of your favorites, Emily Bronte, is very upright. Even Lady of Shalott. So think about the ultimate width. Think about the type of hedge you're wanting, and then you know what size rose to get. You can even do this with climbers. You can actually train them on like that wire trellising that you can find that folks use to kind of make dog kennels and dog yards out of. You can do that vertically and put those boop, boop, boop side by side together, and use climbers if you're trying to have a very narrow space, but you need tall wall.
I've actually done that with the Albrighton Rambler and
Oh,
with the
nice.
Generous Gardener and some other kind of flouncy things, along with some evergreens, and they're kind of, nestling in and around, which I think is natural and looks really good. So Albrighton Rambler, I think, is a very pretty rose.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
Is that still being sold? Is that
Yes,
one
it
still
sure
available?
is. And it is great. I'll tell you the thing about the Albrighton Rambler, it brings us to kind of our next trend. And this is nothing new, especially to us gardeners, but to plant buzzworthy plants. We want more pollinators in our gardens. As gardeners, we kind of have uh, 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 standards that we want to help raise all of our communities, and maybe somebody can't plant the pollinators and they're not a big gardener, but it's up to us to kind of add those in. So remember, a pollinator is not just a bumblebee. It can be a butterfly, it can be a bat, it can be a bird. it can, it covers a huge gamut. And so the ramblers are amazing pollinators because a lot of them have that musk scent to them,
Mhm.
and they have exposed stamens. So any of our roses that aren't a high petal count is going to be a pretty good pollinator. Lady of Shalott, we talk about all the time. Tottering by gently, great little pollinator. Generous gardener, which is a lovely
Mhm.
climber. Scepter dial, which I have really, it's one of our older roses, but I've really been enjoying watching that one in our trials. And it's always got bees on it. Desdemona looks
Mhm.
amazing. The lark ascending, and I could go on and on and on.
One of my favorite photos that I've taken is of Desdemona with a bee on
Oh,
the.
yes.
I just love it. I actually used it in the ad for this podcast.
You sure
Uh,
did. You sure
I
did.
love that. And, with Desdemona, I have one. I think I'm going to add another one because I just love that rose so much. And I cannot see that word without hearing Michael Marriott say it. Um,
Yes.
his British accent is just like, when he says Desdemona, it's just like, oh, it's so lovely. And the rose is lovely. So he has the perfect accent for Desdemona. But
He sure
anyway, and the
does.
bees do love her. And, she's full enough to be just a beautiful rose, but she does let those pollinators in. And I really enjoy that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, we've had so much fun with our trends, but before I can let you go, let's talk about some of our favorite Austins that we're growing. We've done that a little bit already. So
Yeah.
tell me about some of your favorites, and then I'll tell you about some of mine.
I sure will. I continue to be impressed with some of these newer varieties coming out. Um, I really do like Vanessa Bell and Nye Bevan. They are such unsung heroes. In our trials, they are really workhorses. Um, they may not have the strongest fragrance. They do have like a nice light tea fragrance to them, but they're nice bushy shrubs. They're incredibly healthy. And what you get is this cluster of flower set at the end of the stem that's just so beautiful. Um, they have these pink little buds that come out, and that green tea fragrance with a little bit of a lemon and honey
Mhm.
note is just delightful. And if you're a Bloomsbury fan, you got to plant Vanessa Bell because she was also the sister of Virginia Woolf.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And Vanessa Bell is my yellow. You
Yes.
know, she's been my yellow of choice for years. I have two of those. And so you're so right. She just brings so much to the party, and she just has that. Some people are a little careful with yellow in the garden, but Vanessa
Mhm.
Bell is like the perfect yummy yellow.
She is, and she's a real chameleon. She's a nice foil. Some yellows can be a little, especially if you're trying to transition between pinks or even like
Mhm.
crimson tones, it can be a little jarring. But because she comes out with these pink buds, and
Mhm.
then she opens with like a nice pale yellow and then softens to a cream with those little white edges, she's an excellent foil. It brings me back to something that Mr. Alston really knew about. He was a huge fan of Shakespeare and the arts, and he knew that not every single play was filled with lead characters. You need those supporting characters. And I would definitely call Vanessa Bell a supporting character. She makes those lead characters look phenomenal. And that's part of being a great designer, is knowing when to have a little bit of restraint and have those good backup singers.
Absolutely. Okay, who's next?
I'm going to tell you who has kind of, I really do. I've already hinted on this. I'm more and more impressed with Scepter Dial, seeing how it flowers late into the season. I know you're a friend, you really love Elizabeth, and I have
Mhm.
been very impressed with Silas Marner. So when you look at these two roses together, the flowers are similar, but Elizabeth has these big, gorgeous, very old rose fragrant flowers. And Silas Marner, our flowers are smaller. It's on a more of a vase shaped shrub. You're getting that same amazing vigor. You're going to be loaded with flowers late into the season, an extraordinarily healthy plant. So, I can't say enough about it. I'm just very, very pleased with it and love it so much. Tell me why you like Elizabeth.
Well, actually, I can hardly take my eyes off the blooms. And
Yes.
before I added her from the pictures, I thought she was going to be so delicate. And I was almost thinking, well, she's probably going to shatter really quickly. And she looks so delicate, but they don't shatter quickly, even though they
No.
look delicate. They are not. It is a strong shrub. It's a strong bloomer. It was
Yes.
very healthy for me. I mean, it was outstanding. I mean, just out of the gate, I just felt like this was a really, really winning rose.
It is, and you are so right. I would tell people her first couple years in the ground, she's going to be a little odd shape wise. So prune judiciously to kind of shape her up. But by year 3, and she has gotten her own, you're me so excited with what you get with her. She can also grow in a large pot, and she can take sun or some shade too, which is really, really nice. A lot of our roses will bloom in 4 to 6 hours of sun. The disclaimer is you do get more flowers when you have more sun, but that
Mhm.
is another reason a lot of folks like David Austin's. They can flower reliably. You won't get as many flowers, but they do flower reliably in a little bit of shade.
Mhm. Mhm. So, have you got another one for me?
Well, I will tell you this. Here is something that has kind of surprised all of us. And this one showed up on your list too. Emily Bronte always, when I go to my growers, looks really good in the pots. It starts fast, it has amazing foliage on it. What we are starting to see with Emily Bronte in our trials is that she is a very upright grower. And I think that if you are wanting to have a pillar rose,
Oh.
or something that's very narrow and upright, she's going to be your girl. If you're in super high intense light, like in South Texas or in the deep South, do know that you should give her a little more protection from that late afternoon sun. Her very delicately colored apricot, soft pink blooms do fade to cream in super high light, but if you can give her a little shade, you're going to really enjoy her beauty. It's kind of a flat rose flower. She's got old rose scent, and there's notes of like lemon and grapefruit, and named for the Bronte Society.
Mhm. Yep, she's those blooms are lovely. There,
They
that's
are.
what caught me, is I really fell in love with those blooms. So
Yes.
I like that one a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another one that we never talk about is Imogen. And if you find her on our website, I would put her in your garden. She does shatter quickly, but she's so healthy and does a great job. Another old one that I saw looking good in our trials, and if you have it in your garden, crocus rose is tough. And I'm amazed by late season flowering on it. What else Oh, if you have country parson, that we've seen, we know that has a lot of Scottish heritage. We know that that one can take it brutally cold, but we had an employee at our Tyler office actually planted out by her mailbox in Tyler next to an asphalt driveway and the street, 110 degrees, and it was still hanging in there. Got a lot
Wow.
of thorns. So I always like to bring about some of these varieties that maybe aren't the show ponies that people might not be seeing on social media, that we see are doing quite well.
Great. Great. Nice to hear that. Well, I've got to say that one of my all-time faves in the garden, period, is the climber, the generous gardener. We've talked a bit about that.
Yes.
I cannot sing its praises enough. It's probably one of the healthiest Austins I've ever had. And it's just beautiful. When that thing has its first flush, it's just show stopping. So, and I'm adding two more this year. So I've got a new arbor, gonna add two
Wonderful.
more. I just
That one, and you know, that one has kind of a compound fragrance with it. It starts off with kind of an old rose fragrance, and then it kind of morphs into different fragrance profiles. But you are so rewarded. And I always tell folks, if you love New Dawn, you're going to love the Generous Gardener, because to
Mhm.
me, it just brings a little more game. You're going to get more flowers, you're going to get a longer bloom season, and it's very, very healthy.
Well, and it's also more manageable. You know, it's more
Yes.
well behaved. New Dawn can take over your garden and she does it beautifully, but the generous gardener is just a little bit more well behaved in growth habit if you're limited on space. So just a great, great rose all the way around. Just love it. And you know,
Yeah.
I have to talk about Eustacia Vi. I added two last year. In the winter, it was one of those things that we just kept hearing so much about. And every time I'd say it, it got my husband's attention. He says, "Well, now we have to get that. You know, that name, Eustacia Vi. We
Right.
have to have that." So we ended up getting two, and they were great. They did all the things. They just did not disappoint at all. They weren't as large as some of the Austins, and where I was putting them, that was a very good thing. And that was, you know,
Yeah.
one of the reasons that we got them. And so I love the growth habit, but I mean, the blooms were outstanding and very fragrant. You know, I'm all about fragrance right now. I'm just trying to find all the roses with all the fragrance and
Right.
making room for them. And it's requiring a little bit of redesign. But, you know, if you're creative, it's never one and done. You're always redesigning. But I'm redesigning to include more roses with fragrance. And Eustacia Vi, you know, we don't have it in a container, but I bet she'd be fabulous in a container.
She is amazing in a container. And you know, I've had this call actually came into me from one of our garden centers that's in Fremont, California, and someone was buying Eustacia Vi from them, and they wanted to know, can you plant three of them together to get big oomph impact? And yeah, you can. You can also, like if you're buying the little tiny 2 quarts from us online, you can put those together too, to get a bigger impact in a
Mm.
container. But I always tell people, you don't want to put them so close they cannibalize each other in about 3 years. But because she has that kind of nice rounded form,
Yeah.
she would make a big billowy mound. And if I were doing it in the ground, I would put them 1.5 to 2 feet apart in kind of a triangle and let them grow together. But that fruity fragrance, oh, is
Yeah.
delicious. So
It is
delicious.
good. It is good. It is good. When I bring them inside, I always make sure that one gets set by my husband's chair, and
Oh,
you know, because he loves that. You know, he's not the gardener, but he is definitely the garden helper and the garden encourager or enabler, you choose.
good man, good man. And you know, Eustacia Vi has these kind of apricot pink flowers. So
Mhm.
she is a good transition color to put next to some of your apricots, like Lady of Shalott, or some of these other Carding Mill or Bathsheba. She transitions very nicely with true kind of orangey tones because she has that apricot hint to her pink.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned Bathsheba because I want to talk just a little bit about that one. If you're looking for another well-behaved climber, she has been for me, and you're looking for that bloom that you associate with David Austin, that big, thick, gorgeous bloom with some fragrance. Boy, there's your girl. Because I was a little bit scared because, too much orange, although I love Lady of Shalott, and I was not sure about that. I absolutely love Bathsheba. I just love that. I love the color. I love just the rich blooms that she has, those big, voluptuous David Austin blooms. Just
Yes.
love her. I cannot wait to see it this year. I just can't.
And what is so nice, she has that creamy halo around the outside, which can tone down that more apricot center. Um, and then her fragrance, we haven't even talked about myrrh fragrance today. We've kind of hit on some other ones, but she has this really heady myrrh fragrance that has some kind of hints of honey and tea to it. And in my own garden, I'm doing something a little different. I have her planted in front of my neighbor's short little stone retaining wall. And my goal is when she should be getting her sea legs this year for me. I'm going to start training her to go horizontally along this low wall
Oh,
and
nice.
start taking her main canes and send them horizontally. So if we chat next year, I'll let you know how that went.
Oh, I can't wait. I have two Bathshebas. They're on arbors, and
Right.
but we had such terrible deer pressure. One of
Yeah.
them was damaged a little. The other was decimated. I was looking at her today, and it just brought me to tears. But anyway, we just really, especially one section of our garden, just a lot of deer damage. And but one of them is coming back doing great. The other one's going to take her a while. I think she's going to be fine, but it's going to take her a while. But I will see those blooms this year, and that's the important thing.
I would tell you, hang on. We get calls where people go, "Oh, my rose died," or, we had a bad winter. I don't see any action here. Just be patient and hang
Mhm.
on. I was noticing back during COVID, and I got antsy. I took my entire rose garden from one area of the yard and moved it to another area of the yard. I think a lot of us did that.
Yeah, we did.
So I was up fertilizing some roses and pulling weeds from that old area, and I see sprouts of gentle Hermione coming up near some formium that I have. Here's the thing about, I told you I was mulching earlier today. The more you mulch, the more you put good stuff into your soil, you will be surprised what you see grow and emerge.
Mhm.
My sweet husband was the bachelor that didn't have a whole lot going on in his yard. One of the things that I found, the rhododendron hedge that is kind of along our property line that my roses are in front of, are now growing like crazy because I'm caring for the roses and they're getting some benefit. Now I'm going, oh my goodness, I think I need to cut some rhododendrons back.
It happens. It does happen.
It
Everybody
does.
gets happy when the roses get all the attention, but they get the cast off and it's good stuff.
They do, but it just, this was how many years ago now? 5 years ago, I uprooted this garden and there was some little root of gentle Hermione left behind. And I'm thrilled about this. But I'm digging her up and putting her over next to the other gentle Hermione in the garden. And that's a bonus. So don't write it off. Just keep taking care of stuff. Don't overwater. Water enough, but don't overwater. And just keep improving that soil, and you'll be amazing how hardy your plants will become.
Absolutely. We're just getting there. Talking about them, I just get so excited. So this has just been so fun, Rebecca. It's been wonderful to have you. And I love what you said about the trends. I mean, we just couldn't be happier. As rose collectors, This is right down our alley. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for
Oh,
sharing all these great things today.
my pleasure, and it's always such a treat to be here with you, and happy gardening.
Oh, happy gardening to you. You're farther ahead. I'll be looking for your pictures
Sounds good.
while I wait and enjoy my lilac. Friends, we hope you enjoyed today's show, and if so, please share it with others. And until next time, our growing season is finally here. Let's all enjoy every minute.
You've been listening to the Rose Chat podcast with Chris VanCleave and Teresa Byington, expert rose gardeners who want to help you achieve the rose garden of your dreams. Don't miss an episode. Listen anytime on our website at rosechatpodcast.com or listen on the go via the Rose Chat app on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Share this podcast with your social networks and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by using the hashtag RoseChat. Join us next time for another edition of the Rose Chat podcast. The Rose Chat podcast is a production of the Rose Chat Media Group, Birmingham, Alabama.